Okay, welcome to the Minnesota WIC Participant-Centered Webinar Series. My name's Karen. I'll be facilitating the webinar today. And the continued goal of these webinars is to share ideas, best practices around participant-centered WIC services. So joining me today is my colleague Marcus. He will be doing the behind-the-scenes work of monitoring the phone lines and making sure that things run smoothly. So now we will move on to the plan for the day. So the topic area we have for today is dealing with resistance, a topic requested by you. Earlier this month, we did a topic on dealing with difficult people that was targeted towards clerical and administrative staff. And I did see that there were several CPAs that were also on that call, which is super. For those of you who were on the call, you may see some overlap in some of the concepts we'll talk about. But today's call is really going to look at dealing with resistance within the behavior change conversation in our WIC nutrition counseling sessions. So first, we will spend some time looking into some potential causes of resistance. What causes it, and what does it mean? Then we'll look at some skills and strategies we can use to reduce resistance. I want to thank all of you that completed the survey that we sent out asking about resistance. We received excellent thoughts, ideas, and strategies, some really insightful and thoughtful feedback. So I want to thank you for that. This is what we'll share today, your ideas. As always, I'll throw in some examples from my own experience, watching WIC encounters from around the country. Over the years, I've seen a lot of participant resistance. And I've watched strategies or things WIC counselors do that decrease that resistance, or alternatively, things that increase that resistance. And a lot of today we'll be looking at strategies with participants, but we'll also spend some time looking at not just participants' emotions and behaviors, but our own as well. So first, let's define resistance. And I found a few different definitions of resistance. The first one is from the dictionary. It says, resistance is the refusal to accept or comply with something, the attempt to prevent something by action or argument. The next one's from motivational interviewing. And within participant-centered services, we use many motivational interviewing principles and practices because of their proven success in facilitating positive behavior change. So this definition says, resistance is interpersonal behavior, signal of dissonance, predictive of non-change, and highly responsive to counselor style. And the next two are simpler, defining resistance by its role as a signal. Resistance is a signal that the participant views the situation differently. Resistance is a cue to change strategies. So this is what resistance may look like or sound like. It could take many different forms. The silent participant, someone that's difficult to engage or gives one-word answers. Fine, good, no problems. The angry or argumentative participant. There could be a big range here. It could be just the person that answers with, yeah, but, and then gives you reasons why your ideas won't work, or the person that interrupts or discounts your information. And the other end of the range is that visibly angry person, arguing, hostile. The participant who says the right things. We don't drink any pop. We exercise daily. We drink 8 cups of water every day, and only fruits and vegetables as snacks. And every grain's a whole grain. The rushed participant, they're in a hurry. They usually start with, how long will this take? The disengaged or uninterested person, texting or looking at the phone or talking on the phone. The disagreeer, the know-it-all. The doctor didn't mention that. My mom did it, and we're fine. So there are a lot of different appearances for resistance. So what does resistance signify? Resistance is a message, and the messages may differ depending on the situation, but there's a few major emotions behind resistance. Often resistance could signal that there's some shame or guilt about certain behaviors. Fear is the biggest, and some sort of fear is involved in all of these, really. One fear is the fear of being judged and found unworthy. We don't like to be judged. None of us do. And this is the behind the participant that tells you exactly what they think we want to hear. That person fears judgment, and that's why they're not being entirely truthful. Then there's a slightly different thing, which is actually feeling judged. A lot of resistance I see is caused by people thinking that we are telling them that they're doing the wrong thing. Resistance could signify a loss of control or choice. I have to do something. I'm being pushed to do something when I'm not ready. It's no longer my idea, but something I have to do, and this builds resistance. Often people will behave in a passive-aggressive way because they don't feel like they have any control or say in what does or doesn't happen. Some participants may act resistance because they feel ignored or disrespected, or somehow there's an unmet need or expectation that isn't being fulfilled. So some participants might act resistance because they feel they're unable to say what they really think, what they really feel or want. And again, underneath this is fear. If we've been discouraged from expressing ourselves and our needs positively in the past, then we'll use less outright ways to express what we're feeling. One person on the survey said resistance occurs if participants feel defensive or perhaps guilty about a nutrition practice. So let's talk a little about shame and guilt. I think we don't talk about this enough. It's not the happiest of topics, but it's so common in our realm, nutrition and health behaviors. That self-judgment that goes on. In this society, there's often guilt or bad feelings around eating habits. Maybe participants aren't proud of how they're feeding their children, or they're unhappy about their own diet. Maybe there's shame or guilt around weight or body shape, around smoking, around drug use. There's so many behaviors that people can feel guilty about or shame about in this area. These feelings of shame, guilt, defensiveness, they're not where we want someone to be. They're not conducive to behavior change. They don't come from that place of confidence. They come from a place of powerlessness over the situation. And they shape the way you think about yourself. So these emotions, though, often come out as defensiveness. I want to hide my true feelings. If I feel powerless, I put up this fake facade to protect my exposure of those things I feel shame about. I'm fine. Everything's fine, even though inside I'm not fine. And shame and guilt are lonely, isolating emotions. Resistance can also be a signal that participants fear they will be judged. This often is behind the person that comes in already resistant. Their protection mechanism is already on. Their walls are up. And this is also behind the person that may be telling you tall tales of the most perfect eating pattern in history. The only reason to lie about my behaviors is because I fear judgment. And we have all done this to some degree or another. It's natural. Have you ever found yourself maybe fibbing a little on a doctor's questionnaire, maybe rounding up the amount of times a week you exercise, or the number of vegetables you eat in a day, or maybe you round down some other things? So why do we do that? Logically, it doesn't really serve any purpose. It could be guilt or shame, or it could be that we want others to hold a good view of us. That self-image, it's so important. It's natural to care about what other people think. So here are some of your comments. One person said participants could have a history of a negative experience. Maybe there was a time at WIC or somewhere else, maybe a doctor's office, where they were judged or told their behaviors wrong. Past negative experiences, preconceived ideas, our own body language. And depending on someone's background, their upbringing, there could be a lot of fear around judgment and fear of being unworthy, that unworthy feeling. And this can impact their protection mechanism in other situations in their lives. This last bit, our own body language. I found this interesting, and I wanted to hear more from this person. Perhaps they were addressing the fact that we might often be perceived as authority figures. We work for a government program. And maybe our unconscious body language contributes to this perception and this fear of being judged or measuring up. Here's another quote. It could be that they're perceiving they're doing something wrong. Again, they might be judging themselves, and they have this belief, and they're afraid we're going to do the same thing. And here's a last quote. Generally, the resistance may not have anything to do with you and may be coming from what they are dealing with outside of WIC. And this resistance, this fear of potential judgment, often comes out as defensiveness. And this defensiveness, don't judge me, I'm fine. Again, that's not where we want people to be, and that's not where behavior change is going to take place either. So sometimes during the course of WIC visits, people could feel judged. I've seen it. You see the shift in a person instantly when they feel judged. You can hear it in their voice. Now, I know we don't intend for this to happen. And what happens to produce that reaction in one person might be different from another. But the fact is that it does happen, and we want to be attuned to it. We have to have our radar up, because unless we do a course correction, our counseling won't be successful, and this person will not be likely to make a positive behavior change. Because needing to be in this defensive position prevents or blocks people from openly exploring alternatives in a positive and meaningful way. Here are some of your thoughts on where this defensive reaction of feeling judged could come from. Sharing recommendations that are opposed to what they are already doing with their child or with their own eating. Telling a client they are wrong or doing something wrong. Jumping to conclusions right away or educating right away. Giving unwanted advice. So if there is ambivalence going on, maybe they feel two ways. So even though I know the behavior isn't good for me, I do it. Maybe it's for stress relief. Maybe it's because it makes my children happy. Maybe it's because it makes me feel good. So we know that if there's ambivalence, this balance of feelings, and we argue one side of the argument, what we're often forcing them to do unconsciously is argue the other side to show that balance. Yeah, but she cries without it. Yeah, but with my job, fast food is the only option. Now you have them voicing arguments against change. They've gone into that defensive mode to justify or explain their actions. And then the more they themselves voice reasons not to change, the more change will not happen. So here's the last two. Being rushed, focused on my agenda instead of their needs. When I stop listening and start preaching. I really like these two last ones. They're saying we can all fall into this trap occasionally. We all do it. We get tired. We get rushed. We get out of the zone. And that's okay. This realization and self-awareness is the key to improving our skills over time. This realization will help us more quickly get back into the productive, helpful zone. So can we have meaningful conversations, evoke motivation, and give nutrition information without telling people what they're doing is wrong or doesn't meet our guidelines? And absolutely, and I've seen it. So resistance may also stem from my feeling pushed to change when I'm not ready. Some of you in the survey talked about recognizing someone's stage of change is important, and we'll talk more about this. Maybe I'm not ready to change. Maybe I'm either not thinking about it or just started to consider it, and I'm not really at that place of change yet. Maybe I'll get there, but I'm not there yet. Sometimes if we move into ideas, advice, strategies too early, they might feel pushed. And this pushing, the giving reasons for change, In motivational interviewing, they call it the writing reflex. It comes from a good place. It means you care. It means you want the best for this person. But pushing information or goal setting too early may cause resistance to grow. And then, again, we have them arguing against change, which is not the place where we want them to be. So sometimes it's about consciously letting go. This person will do what's right for them. I can't make anyone change. That's up to them. On the survey, there were a lot of suggestions for reducing resistance and a lot of great suggestions that I think get at what the heart of participant-centered services is really all about. So here are some of them. Work on rapport and connection first. Clarifying intent. Designing judgmental-free assessment questions. Reflecting resistance. Passing the power or empowering. Sharing unsolicited information effectively. Customizing our approach to the stage of change they're in. Affirming and shifting focus. And we'll look at each of these in more detail. Many of you mentioned spending time on building rapport first when there's resistance present. Building that relationship, that trust. Without the trust, those defensive walls may stay up. Our counseling will be more effective if we invest some time building that shared connection with participants. So here are some of your suggestions. Attempt to meet them where they are and break the barrier. Sometimes use humor to engage them. Really show them I am there for them and their needs and not to talk down to them. Try to break the mood by talking about the weather or how things are going. Being sensitive, understanding, open, honest, and real with participants. Show genuine interest in the participants and their children. Sometimes lots of issues are going on at home. If you can get them to open up about it, I find that they let their guard down and will start talking more. Because of the nature and the potential sensitivity of our topic, this relationship building is crucial. Say it was a new person that was very resistant. They're wary, they're defensive. I might even sacrifice some of my information sharing time to deal with this right up front. Because whatever I can do now to build trust and show them that I'm someone they can let their guard down with, this will improve every other visit that they have in WIC and increase our influence and then their success. Someone on the survey said, tell them that WIC is here to help and we'd like to talk about what they are interested in to help their family be healthy. This is something I don't think we do very well at WIC at all. And I'm not talking about Minnesota, but nationally as a program. Often we don't explain the process, or we don't explain what we are trying to do, what's our end game. We talked about how important it is to explain goal setting and our goal setting process in a previous webinar. And sometimes we don't explain the purpose of our assessment process or questions, and I see that this creates a lot of confusion. And even the physical process, sometimes we forget to explain what will happen during each WIC visit so that they know. So there's a lot of points along the way where we can clarify our intent, give people a roadmap so they know where we're going and what to expect. This reduces anxiety. It lets them know our goals. We're not here to judge you. We're here to help you with whatever you need to reach your goals around health, wellness, nutrition, eating. So it allows them to drop the fear, the defensive protection mechanism that comes with that unknown. So this is our goal, to send that message of non-judgment, to make WIC a safe, judgment-free zone. So here are some suggestions from the survey. Listen without judgment as much as I can. I love the as much as I can part. It shows self-awareness. We're human. We judge. We all do it. The key is to recognize when it happens. Just notice it first. And then you can start talking back to yourself when it's happening. Karen, you're judging again. Change your thoughts. Then you can slowly work on reducing how often it happens. Being open and non-judgmental. This is where we can help people let go of those unproductive feelings of guilt or shame too. Letting them know eating and physical behaviors has nothing to do with perfection. There's no one way. There's no perfect body size. Adults and children can be healthy at any size. It's about adding small, healthy nutrition habits little by little, one over time. There are no good foods or bad foods. It's about moderation. Listen to them and try to understand why. This isn't always easy because resistance often appears as defensiveness and being argumentative, and sometimes it's hard not to take that personally. Sometimes it just takes empathy and patience. Don't get upset that they're resistant, but try to understand why they might be. Show compassion and understanding. This empathy and compassion, this can be our ticket to not getting defensive ourselves when we come across that resistance. Because resistance often impacts our own behavior. And I see this a lot in myself, and I see it in WIC staff. Like everyone, we make assumptions about people early on in any conversation, and this impacts how we interact with them. When we sense resistance or anger, we get defensive, and then we change our behavior. We all naturally have expectations about how others should act, based on our own values about how people should behave, how they should interact with each other. When other people don't behave in ways that reflect those values, we might feel feelings of frustration or anger. And so it's important to look at ourselves and our own emotions, our own values as well. So these emotions, beliefs, defensive, they can close our eyes to when participants start to soften and open and show the beginnings of engagement. And we lose that chance. I see it happen so often. We have this awesome power to shift people's attitudes. And every resistant participant is an opportunity. Just because they're resistant at the beginning of the session doesn't mean that their engagement won't grow during the session with our help. So can we resist our natural instinct? If they're not engaged and disinterested, can you stay engaged and be open to seeing that shift? It's not easy. We have to be self-aware of when it's happening. Sometimes staying open and engaged will work, and sometimes it may not, depending on the level of resistance. But even if you don't get the outcome that you want, you'll still know that you handled the situation well, and that practice will pay off when other participants make that switch and start to engage. So when we're asking assessment questions and searching for where this person's motivation is, we need to remember that often how we ask matters, especially when talking about nutritional risks. One person wrote, what causes resistance is if something is worded incorrectly and a participant takes offense, if they feel like you're asking a question is grilling them, when in fact it's just gathering information. So one thing that will help with this is that roadmap we talked about earlier, telling them our intent for asking assessment questions. And so sometimes during counseling, when we identify an area where there's a potential for behavior change that would impact the health of participants, we need to assess, is there motivation there? Is there a need for knowledge there? And this is often a crossroads where our next question can either build resistance and feelings of judgment, or it can evoke motivation. So as an example, a tricky one could be smoking. I've seen a lot of resistance here from participants, and I think a lot of it is how we approach it. Sometimes a person, when asked if they smoke or how many cigarettes a day is normal for them, whatever your assessment process is, they'll give you a sign. Like they might say, I've cut down to 5 a day. That's powerful change talk. It tells me there's major motivation there. Or they might say, not many, it's no big deal. That could be a signal that they may not be motivated, or they're saying, don't judge me. But sometimes they don't give you clues. How about this scenario? So the counselor starts with, prior to pregnancy, how many cigarettes did you smoke per day? Participant says, about 10. The counselor then says, since becoming pregnant, how many cigarettes do you smoke per day on average? The participant says, around 10. So what's your next move here? Some people might assume because she hasn't reduced the cigarettes that there's not motivation. But for me, it's unclear. We don't know. We could just go right to information sharing at this point and say, WIC recommends that women cut down or stop smoking during pregnancy because of the dangers for the baby. But without knowing her motivation and whether there's need for information, we might cause resistance to build. I'm going to guess that most likely this woman knows that smoking is not a positive health behavior during pregnancy. So what is the next question that can explore motivation without building resistance and without going towards judgment? So I want to take a poll. I'm going to give you some possible options of some I've heard in action, and I want you to vote for one you like best, or if you have one better, I'm going to invite you to share. So what I'll do is I'll read them first, and then you can vote. So what would be your next move? One could be, do you have any current or future plans to make changes in your smoking? Or some people we talk to are either in the process of trying to quit or thinking about it, and we help them with resources or discussing their plans and motivation. Do you have any goals around smoking? Or have you ever thought about or tried cutting down on smoking? Or on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is not interested in changing my smoking and 10 is I really like to stop, where would you put yourself? Or maybe you have another one that's better. So go ahead and vote now, and we'll get the results and see which one works. And if you do choose other, I invite you to think about raising your hand to share with us what has worked for you. And it looks like it's spread across all of them, but it looks like the winner is the second one. Some people we talk to are either in the process of trying to quit or thinking about it, and we help them with resources or discussing their plans or motivations. Do you have any goals around smoking? I do like this one. I heard this one, and I do like it because it's not saying that they have to. It's saying that some people feel this way, and we help them. So I will go back, and if you're interested in sharing your other response, feel free to raise your hand at any point. Okay, we do have someone raise your hand. So I think there might be 2. So go ahead and come off mute and share your response.
We were talking about it, and we're talking about maybe just affirming that, yes, quitting smoking can be really hard, and then maybe we would get a response from that.
So just sharing that challenge of, yeah, quitting smoking can be really hard, and get her response to that. I love that one. And doing things like this, brainstorming at staff meetings, can be very effective as well. Also, with our general shift in style, as we move more from telling and correcting to more evoking, we should see, and I have seen, a drop in resistance. Here are some of your suggestions. Asking them what changes they'd like to make for their family. Open questions, reflection, clarification. Asking for what they'd like to work on for a goal. Acceptance, not preaching. Looking for goals that the participant brings up and is willing to work on, something important to them. So if they come in fearing judgment, this throws them off guard. It's a message saying, nope, I'm not interested in judging you. I want to hear about you. I want to hear what you want. And often this will be a powerful tool to help them drop those defenses. And reflecting listening is a powerful way to convey respect and non-judgment and to reduce resistance. If there's not change talk or you're not hearing motivation to change, just reflecting where they are, and it's not agreeing or condoning any particular behavior, it's where they're at. It's just acknowledging it. It's saying, I'm going to resist that writing reflex to fix you. I'm not going to judge you. I don't have to push for change because I know it doesn't work. So some examples could sound like, weaning right now isn't a priority for you. Quitting smoking is not something that you're going to undertake right now. You're not concerned about his growth. So if you reflect, they're more likely to feel that their point has been heard. So there's no need to repeat it or defend themselves. So many times I see people, when their defenses come down, they start to play with the idea or talk about behavior change. Yeah, maybe not now, but soon. I really should eventually. So one appointment I watched in Minnesota one time, a pregnant woman said she couldn't drink any milk other than whole milk or she'd gag. She's tried and tried. Now, I might have gone right into information sharing or suggestions. I would have talked about maybe mixing the milk types to get used to it, or maybe talked about how it takes time to get used to a different type of milk. But this nutritionist simply started by reflecting. She said, so drinking the 1% milk is not going to work for you. Just reflecting what she heard without judgment. And then she added the question, so can you think of other ways you could use the milk you get from WIC? No resistance in the participant. They had a great conversation about other ways to add milk, and then by the end of the short conversation, the participant even commented that she wanted to try other ways to drink it. Now that the resistance is gone, she actually starts giving arguments for change. So reflections are a powerful way to allow the participant to drop their defenses. One thing that helps with resistance is if we can get out of that role of, I'm the nutrition expert and I have the answers to solve your problems. If feeling powerless or not in control is an emotion underlying resistance, let's do whatever we can to help them feel powerful, confident, like they have control in their lives and in their children's lives. Because this confidence comes from a powerful place. And this is where change happens, where people have the courage to try positive changes in their lives. So here are some of your suggestions. Ask them what they would like to share with other new moms on tips and tricks about nutrition they have learned through their own experience. So you're conveying that thought that they've accumulated a lot of valuable knowledge, and we can recognize that and celebrate that. And this is going to help them feel pride and other positive emotions. Asking clients what they know and what they think might work for a plan or a solution for their problems. So with that one, I want to back up. With that one, you're acknowledging that they know their situation best and what might work, asking for their ideas. And that could have another benefit, too. It often leads people to ask you for your advice or what you think. And now that you've been asked, now your information sharing will be so much more effective. And so this next one says, acknowledge that they have the choices and empower them to share. Someone shared these great lines. It's your choice, or you know your family the best. Two short yet intensely powerful phrases to empower them. What about when you want to share information on a risk factor when they haven't asked? So maybe you believe there's a knowledge gap, this person needs the nutrition education. It happens a lot. Our nutrition knowledge is one of our main assets. So how do we share information that they might need in a way that won't build resistance? How can we share the information without making them feel wrong or feel judged? One person on the survey wrote, how do we tactfully present information that is required yet may spark resistance? So here are some ways I've seen counselors be effective. The first suggestion is to separate the information giving from the assessment process. If you share it right then, they might feel corrected. You could add it later with some other information, maybe share a handout and review a few key points from it, and your point is one of them. By separating it, you're not correcting, but you're just sharing information. Another suggestion is to present it as relatively new advice, which with infant and child nutrition is pretty common. Recommendations have been changing pretty quickly. You could share it as something you learned because you did. And that makes it okay that they didn't know it. Even you had to learn it too. Again, it makes it okay. Many of you shared that asking permission to share information is a powerful way to reduce resistance. Asking if they want the information, would it be useful for them? It's a sign of respect of their personal choice and control. So some of what you said for asking permission, what causes resistance? 2 people wrote, just telling them what to do and not asking if they'd like some advice. Clients feeling disrespected, not asking permission, assuming a client doesn't know something instead of asking them what they know and how they feel. When asked what could help, there were 2 suggestions from the survey. Asking their permission to present them with education, by asking permission to share ideas of how to help with the areas of concern for them. One example of where there could be a knowledge gap is adding cereal in the bottle. This may be a technique shared by their mom or their grandmom. It was a popular technique to help babies sleep better. And now we know that this practice has several negative side effects or risks. So often this is a place where people might not know what's recommended, and this is a place, too, where resistance may show up. Resistance might sound like, yeah, but it helps her sleep. My mother did it and we were fine. Basically, participants arguing against change, right where we don't want them to be. So I'm going to give you some possible ways to share this information that I've heard. You can tell me which of these responses you think might work, or if there's another one that you think would work better. So again, I'll read these and we'll see which ones that you like. And these are long, so I'll have to read them. So how would you respond? So later in the session you could say, I have some information on introducing solids. Would that be helpful for you? The recommendations are to introduce one food at a time so you can identify any food allergies and introduce baby food with a spoon so they learn how to swallow. Of course, they won't be good at it at first because it's really different than drinking formula. So most will come right back out at first, but eventually they'll learn. Or another one could be, it's interesting. It used to be the recommendation to put cereal in the bottle for babies to help them sleep. Now, as the American Academy of Pediatrics is learning more about babies' swallowing and digestive tract, they're recommending any foods besides formula be fed with a spoon. Or, can I share something with you that I've learned? The latest recommendation is now for babies to get anything besides formula with a spoon. This is for anything like vegetables, infant cereal, baby fruits. It prevents occasional problems with swallowing and choking and other digestive issues. Or maybe there's one that you like better, so go ahead and vote now. And it looks like several people picked the second one, but it looks like the third one, can I share with you something I've learned, is one that's liked best by the majority of the group. So it might be a fun exercise at staff meetings to take a few of these challenging ones, challenging topics, and brainstorm ways to share information you want to share when they haven't asked for it, and do it in a way that won't make people feel bad or guilty or judged. So we said that when information is needed, it matters how you provide it. It's also important to know when a participant doesn't need information. As an example, I was in an appointment and the participant said, I'm giving too much juice this summer. The doctor said to only give a small glass, but it's so hot, I've been giving her about 2 to 3 glasses of juice. The nutritionist very politely said, yeah, that doctor's right. That is too much juice. It should be about this amount, and she showed her the juice model. That response produced resistance in the participant. You could see and hear the resistance immediately. She said, yeah, I know, but I want her to drink enough, and that helps. So that's ambivalence. They're filling in the rest of that argument to give both sides. And since we're convinced by what we say out loud, now we put her in the position of arguing against change. So a couple of things here. One, she didn't need the information. She already said the doctor told her. So we need to evoke her own motivations about wanting to limit the juice. And number two, this put the nutritionist in the position of power. and inadvertently telling this participant they're doing something wrong. So a big sign that someone doesn't need the information is you might hear them say, I know it's not good, but, and then give reasons for doing the behavior. Or, I know I really should, but, and so that's a clue that says this person doesn't need information, but motivation. For this participant, we could take a guess at her inner motivations for giving more juice than's necessary to reflect what you think her motivation is. Maybe something like, so you want to give her less juice, but it's summer and you want to make sure she has enough liquids to stay hydrated and something she'll like to drink. Now, she can always correct you if your reflection is wrong. But by offering this reflection, you tell her, hey, I get you. That makes sense. You want the best for her, to keep her hydrated. And you might go on and offer, I could share with you a suggestion from other mothers to get the taste of the juice with less. It may or may not work for you, but lots of moms tell me they add a splash of juice to the water to make it tasty. So simple shifts can change our relationship from expert to partner. So it's less about us having the answers and more about their motivation. Here's another example I've heard with the juice. So the WIC staff says, how much juice does she drink? Participant says, she loves it. She'd drink all day. She would drink it all day. I know it's healthy, but I don't want her to drink too much. I try to limit her to about 3 glasses a day. So the participant's proud at this point. She's telling you how she's doing a positive behavior. But part of us is still saying, yeah, but 3 glasses is still above the recommendation, and I know this child is above the 95th percentile in weight. We might be tempted to think there's a knowledge gap, and I should give her the recommendation. Yes, juice is healthy, but WIC only recommends about 4 ounces of juice per day. Just a little correction I'm giving her. But what I've done now is I've taken on that role of expert, and now I have the power. It's not what we meant to happen, but this can cause resistance. She thought she was doing the right thing, and now it turns out she was wrong. So when her motivation is, I don't want her to drink too much, can we instead affirm and celebrate that limiting juice is her idea, and it's a great one. So give her credit for that behavior. You could say something like, so your idea is to find that balance. A little is a good thing, but you don't want her to have too much sugar or affect her appetite. That's a great idea. You could even go lower on the juice if you wanted to. That's your call. Nutritionally, it's fine to go lower. Some parents even just put a splash in there for taste. So if it's their idea, they're more likely to act on it. So some people in the survey mentioned customizing the approach based on where they are in the stages of change. So what can cause resistance is providing education and counseling that is beyond the client's stage of change. A person said, more training is needed on recognizing the stages of change and how each stage sounds and how to respond to the stage the participant is in. I think this would be a great training or a facilitated discussion for a staff meeting. So we really want to customize our approach to where this person is at in the stages of change. Maybe they're pre-contemplative. They're not really ready for change. Maybe in that case, you'll want them to know that you'll be there with resources if they ever need it. Maybe you want to assess their knowledge or beliefs to see if there's a knowledge gap. Maybe they're in contemplation and they're starting to play with the idea. This is when you don't want to push too hard into action steps. You could use phrases like, if you were ever going to give up smoking, exercise more, cook more meals at home, whatever it is, what would you think might work for you? That's less threatening. Or it could be at this stage it's more important to talk about importance, their reasons, their motivations, rather than plans. So this will increase their motivation to move into that preparation phase. Or maybe they aren't already in preparation. Maybe they're planning. This could be a time to really dive in and help them around goal setting, setting small, achievable targets. For action or new behaviors and maintenance, this is where affirmations really help to strengthen behavior. This is also where we want to still get them to talk about the health and other benefits of the behavior, what's good about family meals, what continues to motivate them around breastfeeding. Saying these things out loud will help keep up that motivation and sustain them during hard times when they might be tempted to relapse. So I liked this quote also. Maybe on this particular day, something else is more of a priority. Let the participant talk to see where they're coming from, and as a CPA, decide how little and how much to discuss. You get to feel out where this person is, what their needs are today, what will suit them best, and what will help them the most. You can decide when to back off, when to lean in, and this is the essence of PCS for me too, that individualized approach. On the survey, many of you said you use affirmations when faced with resistance, and it's a powerful way to reduce resistance quickly. When you affirm them for positive behaviors they've started, you're changing that belief that they'll be judged. Affirmations say, I'm on your side. I see something great that you're doing, even if the behavior has just started. I'll give you an example of when an affirmation might have worked in an appointment. It was an appointment where a child was still on the bottle at about 1.5 years. Mom said she used the cup for juice and water, but still uses the bottle for milk. And the nutritionist politely said, we do want to try to get her off that bottle to protect her teeth. Pleasant tone, she was just sharing information. Immediate visible resistance from the participant. Participant laughed and said, good luck with that. And the nutritionist reflected, you don't want to hear this from me, but, and then she went on to give more information to try to convince her that it was important. So trying to persuade someone will not be effective if there's ambivalence there. On the one hand, she knows the recommendations, but on the other hand, her daughter likes the bottle. It soothes her when she cries, and taking it away would be painful. So if we argue one side, as in this example, it sets the participant up to argue the other side, that righting reflex. Instead, could we have used an affirmation there to build motivation for behaviors? We can affirm even the smallest bit of positive behavior. So you've already started to use that cup. You're helping protect her teeth. So just by getting that affirmation, she might start thinking of herself as someone who protects her daughter's teeth. Just that might help motivate her towards behavior change. You could explore it later and say, when would you like to be done with bottles entirely? And just reflect where she's at. Affirmations help us foster that behavior change with a positive approach. Just like water to a plant, whatever we affirm will grow. Here are some comments from the survey around affirmations. Start with complimenting their child and something the parent is doing well with them. I try to engage them by complimenting things they are doing well with their child. Sometimes that makes them open up a little bit. Ask what they already know and are doing for their family. Reflect and acknowledge what you see. So resistance is a normal part of the behavior change game and process. It will always be there for us as we explore where people's motivation is and where it isn't. If someone hasn't changed, there's usually a reason for it. There's some ambivalence going on. There's some arguments for change and reasons not to. And we don't know what this person's motivations are, so we have to explore it. And often resistance will come up to help give us a sign. And we have to be okay with that. It's not that we can prevent resistance from ever happening in the first place, but it's how we deal with it that's important. Sometimes resistance is a sign. It says, oh, I pushed a little too hard for change there. Let me back up a little bit. And that's okay. It's not a perfect science. It's often trying and then seeing what works, as long as we recognize the sign and use it. So another strategy is to shift focus. If there's resistance around a particular topic, you have the option to shift the conversation to a different direction. You're using resistance as a cue to shift. And this works well with resistance around the topic of weight. Often there's a lot of fear, resistance of being judged. When you sense this, you could take the focus off weight if it's not going to be effective. Maybe focusing on other health behaviors that have the potential to impact weight. Here's a quote from the survey. I usually talk about food resources if a client isn't interested in nutrition education. Clients who continue to participate must need the foods if they aren't interested in the education. So talking about WIC foods is a great thing, and it's something that most people can talk about easily. How do you use the foods? How do you use those beans that you get? What are your favorites at home? Are there any foods that you don't use or that you don't buy at the store? Maybe you could help with ideas, recipes, other resources. So shifting focus is telling the person, I'm going to respect your sign and I'm not going to go there, but instead I'm going to go somewhere else. So just another option for reducing resistance. So I want to say thank you. Thank you for your continued level of participation in these webinars. We're getting a lot of people. And not only that, but for your help with these pre and post surveys. It's allowed us to develop and share some really meaningful content. And you've all inspired me to think about and take a different perspective on some things and to continue to grow and think about participant-centered services. So I want to thank you, and I hope you join us again in the future for more of these webinars. So thanks, and have a great day.